So I was born in the projects. I was born uptown Harrisburg. Um, I had a sister. I had two sisters, and I didn't live with my dad. I only lived with my mom. And my mom went to school to become a nurse, and she ended up getting my siblings and I out of the hood. My whole life, my siblings and I, we went to private school, but in 8th grade, I decided that I wanted to go to public school. And back in 1999, when I was in 8th grade, when I was in 9th grade, back in 1999, I decided that I wanted to do drugs and alcohol, even though my mother was going to school to become a nurse, because my mother dropped out of high school and she went back to become a nurse. So my mother tried her hardest to get my siblings and I out of the projects into the suburbs. Most of my life, I lived in the suburbs, and most of my life, I went to private schooling. But in 8th grade and 9th grade, I decided to go to public schools. And when I was about 14, 15, or 16 years old, I decided to try drugs and alcohol, and I became addicted to crack and cocaine and alcohol and weed and nicotine. I had 2 girlfriends in high school, but I was domestically violent towards them, and I simple assaulted them girls, and I got domestic violence charges. So even though my mom tried to get me out of the projects into a better life, I decided to drop out of high school. And after I dropped out of high school, I became homeless. I lived with my mom until I was like 26, 27, 28 years old. And then I was an old man and I was still living with my mom. And my mom decided to kick me out. And I became homeless after I dropped out of school. I was homeless and I was addicted to crack cocaine for about 3 months, 3 to 4 months. I was homeless. And I went to the government aid office and the welfare office and the case management unit, and they found me this apartment. When I first got here, I was still drinking heavy and I was still using narcotics, and I never had an apartment before, so I didn't know really what I was getting into. But about 7 years ago, I decided to take my mental health seriously, and I decided to go to a mental health specialist and a therapist, and I decided to receive medicine for my schizophrenia. So through my drug and alcohol abuse, something clicked in me, and I realized that drugs and alcohol were ruining my life. So I stopped drinking for about 5 or 6 years, and I stopped using narcotics. But when I was homeless, I found this apartment. And now I live at this apartment, and I go to my mental health doctors regularly every 3 months. So I ended up living here in public housing. Again, I went to private school. I had the same opportunity as everyone, but I had a learning disability and I had a drug and alcohol abuse problem. Meanwhile, my mom was going to school to become a nurse. So I had a beautiful childhood. I always had my mom working overtime for us, so we have a nice life. But again, I got wrapped up with the wrong people. I started using drugs and alcohol. I dropped out of high school. I got so many charges. I got several burglary charges. I got aggravated assault charges. I got 2 domestic violence charges where I physically assaulted 2 women. And I got a drug and alcohol problem. I stole from my parents during my drug and alcohol addiction. But somehow, I always had my mom in the background working overtime for my siblings and I. And her love kind of kept me straight. When I was homeless, I would remember all the happy moments of my childhood with my siblings and my mom and I. And I would hold on to that memory of my mom's love that she gave us. And that's kind of what got me into the mental health unit. That's kind of what got me into taking my mental health serious. And it got me into AA, and it got me into rehabilitation programs. But currently I'm doing good. I live here. I live month to month. I'm on Social Security disability. I don't need any money. I don't need any help. I live month to month. I can afford my monthly expenses. And I still got my mom. My dad's passed away, but he's in heaven. So that's it, man. I know that public housing is the end of my story after I dropped out. But really, it's only the beginning. Because I know that God has a plan for me. God has a plan for my future. And I know that God loves me. And I'm just kind of hanging out here with family, staying sober, staying straight, staying honest. And that's my story, but my past is just a lesson. It's not a sentence. And, you know, I know that everybody is going through their own issues. So I know to be nice and kind to everyone. And I know to be on my best behavior in society, to treat people with respect, to treat public and private property with respect. And I'm just living my life. I don't think I'm going to get locked up anymore. I've been locked up a few times. But I learned my lesson. I definitely learned my lesson.